In 2017, one single company's failure managed to expose the private, sensitive data of nearly half of all American adults. So today, we're diving into the story of the Equifax Data Breach. It's a cybersecurity disaster that, honestly, makes you ask some really big questions about who's holding our information and just how safe it really is.
And this really gets right to the heart of it. The Equifax breach wasn't just some super sophisticated, unavoidable attack. No, it was a preventable disaster. As we're about to see, the company knew it was vulnerable, and they just did nothing.
And this was the result. The personal, private data of nearly 148 million Americans was stolen. To put that in perspective, that's almost half the entire adult population of the United States. The scale of this failure is it's staggering. So you've got to be wondering, how in the world did one company get its hands on this much data in the first place? To really get what happened here, we first have to understand the system we're all a part of, whether we like it or not. Okay, so you've got these companies, credit bureaus like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They're basically financial gatekeepers. But here's the crazy part. Most of us never signed a contract with them, right? We never explicitly gave them permission. And yet, they build these huge files on our entire lives that can decide whether you get a loan, a mortgage, or even a job. And we're not just talking about leaked credit card numbers here, which would be bad enough. The data that was stolen was the very core of your personal identity. Social security numbers, addresses, your date of birth. It was literally a complete toolkit for an identity thief, all gift-wrapped and stored in one convenient place.
So how was this digital vault, holding the keys to millions and millions of lives, left so incredibly vulnerable? The shocking part isn't just that it happened, it's that this wasn't some kind of unstoppable, genius-level attack. It was just taking advantage of a known, fixable weakness.
This timeline, well, it tells a pretty damning story. Back in March, a critical software patch was released. A fix was available. Equifax just failed to install it. And for 2 whole months, that door was left completely unlocked, letting hackers walk right in and access 51 different databases.
And it wasn't just that one mistake. When investigators dug in, they found a total cascade of failures. Things like expired security certificates, which let the intruders just move around their systems completely undetected for 76 days. This whole thing points to a culture where basic cybersecurity just wasn't a priority. At all.
So they finally discovered the breach. But that was just the beginning of the problem. What Equifax did next, or maybe more accurately, what they didn't do, is what really sparked a whole new level of outrage.
So get this, 3 senior executives sold off $1.8 million of their Equifax stock. The timing here is absolutely critical. This happened after the company knew about the breach, but before they told the public.
For 6 critical weeks, Equifax just sat on this catastrophic news. From the end of July all the way to early September, they knew. But nearly 150 million people were left completely in the dark, totally unable to take any steps to protect themselves.
Now, while the timing looked, let's say, terrible, the executives claimed they had no idea about the breach when they sold their shares. And in the end, no insider trading charges were ever actually filed against them.
So what was the real fallout from this massive corporate failure? Let's take a look at the aftermath and ask the question, did the punishment really fit the crime here?
It's really important to remember just how global this breach was. Yeah, the vast majority of victims were in the US, but this failure also hit over 15 million people in the UK and thousands more up in Canada.
When you actually look at the consequences, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. Equifax, the company, paid a pretty hefty settlement, sure, but it was just a fraction of its annual revenue. The CEO? He resigned, but he got to keep his pension and benefits. And the consumers? Well, we were left with a permanent risk of identity theft, and all we were offered was credit monitoring.
The difference is it's stark. Even if you take the maximum $700 million settlement, and remember, most of that was for credit monitoring services, it averages out to less than $5 for every single American affected. A tiny, tiny sum for a lifelong risk.
This entire saga, it just forces us to ask some really fundamental questions. And not just about Equifax, but about this entire system of data collection and what corporate responsibility even means anymore.
I mean, here's the core problem, right? None of us can just opt out of this system. We're forced to hand over our data. So, if that's the deal, shouldn't these companies have an absolute non-negotiable responsibility to protect it?
And think about this. A social security number, once it's compromised for life. Is an offer to watch for fraud really fair compensation for a permanent risk that victims now have to manage forever?
And this all leads to one final provocative question. Given how essential these companies are to our economy and the fact that we have no choice but to use them, should we start treating credit bureaus like public utilities? The same way we regulate our water or electricity. After the Equifax breach, it feels like a question we can't afford to ignore any longer.